When my son-in-law screamed that I had gone mad, he was standing at the gate of my new villa with his friends and suitcases, demanding to be let in. They had driven hours to the coast, expecting luxury at my expense. I told them to leave. 30 minutes later, the police arrived. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The coastal highway curved like a promise. I gripped the steering wheel tighter as the Pacific opened up before me. Endless and mine. 40 years of engineering calculations, weekend shifts, and carefully invested bonuses. All of it had led to this moment. The villa waited 3 blocks ahead, perched above Carmel by the sea like a reward I had finally earned. I parked in front of the property and sat there for a moment, the engine ticking as it cooled. $2.9 million. The number had terrified me when I made the offer, but my financial advisor had nodded approvingly. "You can afford this, Richard. You have been too cautious your whole life." The ocean wind carried salt through my open window. 62 years old, and I was finally learning what freedom tasted like. The box labeled kitchen sat in my passenger seat. I had packed it myself 3 days ago, right after calling Sophie with the news. Her response had been enthusiastic, maybe too much so. "That's incredible, Dad. Carmel, we should visit soon." I had been pleased by her excitement. Relieved, she seemed happy for me. Stupid in retrospect. I lifted the box and started up the walkway. The villa's cream-colored facade glowed in the late afternoon sun, windows reflecting gold. My keys jingled in my pocket. Actual keys to actual property I actually owned. Not a rental, not temporary. Mine. Then I saw the suitcases. 3 large roller bags, 2 duffel bags, beach chairs still tagged with price stickers, a massive cooler with condensation dripping onto my new deck boards. I froze mid-step, the box suddenly heavy in my arms. The door opened from inside. Ethan stood in my doorway, sunglasses pushed up into his sandy hair, wearing board shorts and a smile that did not reach his eyes. Behind him, 2 men I vaguely recognized from Sophie's social media posts hovered awkwardly, holding more bags. "Hey, Richard, perfect timing." Ethan leaned against my doorframe like he owned it. "We were just figuring out who gets which bedroom. Sophie said you would not mind us crashing here for the month. Amazing place, by the way." My mouth opened. Nothing came out. The box trembled in my grip. "What are you talking about?" The words finally formed. "I never agreed to this. You need to leave." Ethan's smile widened, but his eyes went flat. "Come on, do not be like that. It is a huge place. 3 bedrooms, right? You will not even know we are here. Besides, Sophie already told everyone we would be here." The 2 friends, Brandon and Kyle, I remembered now, shifted their weight, staring at the deck boards. One cleared his throat softly. They knew. They knew this was wrong. But they had come anyway. "This is my home," I said, setting the box down carefully, afraid I would drop it. "I did not invite you. You need to pack up and leave now." Ethan's expression hardened. He stepped forward, filling the doorway, his 6-foot frame suddenly less casual and more threatening. "You are seriously doing this? After Sophie talked about how generous you are?" "Hold on. Let me call her. She will straighten this out." He pulled out his phone without waiting for my response. I could hear it ringing through the speaker. He had turned the volume up deliberately. 3 rings. 4. "Ethan?" Sophie's voice cut through the ocean wind. "What is wrong?" "Hey, babe. Yeah, we are here, but your dad is acting really weird. He is saying we cannot stay." "What?" Her voice rose sharply. "Put him on." Ethan extended the phone toward me, eyebrows raised in mock innocence. I did not take it. He shrugged and tapped the speaker button instead, holding it between us like a weapon. "Dad, what is wrong with you?" Sophie's voice filled the space, sharp enough to cut. "Ethan said you were acting crazy. They drove 6 hours to get there. You are really going to embarrass me like this? After everything I have done for you?" After everything she had done for me. The phrase hit like a slap. I tried to remember what exactly she had done. Called on birthdays sometimes, invited me to dinners where Ethan dominated conversations about his latest business venture. Ventures that never quite materialized into actual jobs. Let me pay for those dinners. "Sophie, I never agreed to this. You never asked. This conversation is over." "Over?" Her voice went shrill. "You called the police on Ethan, your own son-in-law. Wait, you are going to, are you not? That is what this is?" I had not mentioned police. The thought had not even formed yet, but now that she had said it, the idea crystallized. If you do this, if you humiliate my husband like this, do not expect to be part of this family anymore. I mean it. Her breathing was rapid, angry. "We were going to tell you something important this weekend, something that would have made you happy. But now, forget it. You just proved you do not deserve good news." Ethan was watching me closely, calculating. Brandon had taken 2 steps backward. Kyle was staring at his shoes like they might offer escape. My jaw ached. I realized I had been clenching it so hard my molars hurt. 40 years of careful planning, of building a life, of trying to be a good father after Laura died. Sophie had been 16 when cancer took her mother. I had raised her alone, worked doubles to pay for her college, walked her down the aisle 5 years ago while Ethan's parents sat in the front row looking vaguely disappointed. 5 years. 5 years they had lived in my Sacramento house, the one I had kept as my primary residence while I worked my final year before retirement. 5 years of just until we get on our feet, and Ethan's got something big coming through, and we will start paying rent next month. The pattern had always been there. I just refused to see it. "Goodbye, Sophie." I pressed the red button myself before Ethan could react. He stared at the dead phone, then at me. Something dangerous flickered across his face. "You just made a huge mistake, old man." I turned without answering and walked back to my car. My hands were steady as I opened the driver's door. Through the windshield, I could see Ethan pacing on the porch, gesturing angrily to his friends. One of them shook his head, clearly ready to leave. Ethan grabbed his arm, said something harsh. The friend pulled away. I reached for my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher's voice was calm, professional. "What is the nature of your emergency?" "I have trespassers on my property, 3 men who refuse to leave." My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, mechanical. Through the windshield, I watched Ethan watching me. He had stopped pacing. Our eyes met across 30 feet of distance, and something cold settled in my chest. "Are you in immediate danger, sir?" "No, but they will not leave voluntarily." 15 minutes, she told me. I stayed in the car, engine off, hands resting on the steering wheel like I was still driving. Ethan kept glancing at me, then at his friends, then back. He was performing now, gesturing broadly, shaking his head with exaggerated disbelief, playing the victim for an audience that had not arrived yet. Brandon and Kyle stood apart from him, talking quietly. One checked his phone. The other picked up a duffel bag, testing its weight, clearly calculating how fast they could pack. The patrol car rolled up silently. No lights or sirens. A single officer emerged, middle-aged, stocky with gray, threading through his dark hair. He surveyed the scene with the careful neutrality of someone who had broken up family disputes before. His nameplate read Daniels. Ethan moved first, striding toward the officer with his hand extended and his face arranged in reasonable concern. I stepped out of my car more slowly, gathering the manila folder I had brought with my closing documents. Officer Daniels listened to Ethan for perhaps 90 seconds, nodding occasionally, taking no notes. Then he turned to me. "Mr. Hale, can you show me proof of ownership of this property?" "Certainly." I handed him the folder. "Here is the deed. I closed on this purchase 3 days ago. I never gave anyone permission to be here." He examined the papers carefully, comparing my driver's license to the name on the deed. His expression did not change, but something in his posture relaxed slightly. "Sir," he addressed Ethan without looking up from the documents, "do you have any written agreement, lease, or documentation showing you have permission to be on this property?" Ethan's confidence flickered. "It is his daughter, my wife. This is a family property. You cannot just kick family out." "Actually, sir," Daniel said evenly, "without the owner's permission, you are trespassing. I am going to have to ask you to gather your belongings and leave immediately." "This is insane." Ethan's voice rose. Brandon and Kyle were already moving, grabbing bags with practiced efficiency. "You are taking his side. We drove all the way from Sacramento. We were invited." "By whom?" Daniel's tone remained level. "By Sophie, his daughter." "Is Sophie on the deed?" Silence. "Then she has no authority to grant you access." The officer turned to me. "Do you want to press charges?" I thought about it, about paperwork and court dates and Sophie's face in a courtroom, about Ethan's parents whom I had met exactly twice, shaking their heads in some future family gathering I would never attend. "No," I said finally. "I just want them gone." Ethan slammed a suitcase closed with enough force to make the latches crack. "You just destroyed your own family, old man. Do not come crying when you are alone." The words should have hurt. Maybe they did. Somewhere beneath the numbness. I stood there watching as Brandon and Kyle loaded the last bags into a silver SUV, and all I felt was tired. Daniels waited until the taillights disappeared down the coastal highway before handing back my documents. "You okay, sir?" "Yes, thank you." He nodded once and drove away. I stood on the porch, my porch, as the sun dropped toward the ocean. The air tasted like salt and something sharper like burnt bridges. I picked up the kitchen box I had abandoned earlier and carried it inside. The villa was exactly as the photos had shown. Hardwood floors, vaulted ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Pacific, empty except for the faint smell of cleaning products and new paint. I set the box on the granite counter and did not open it. Instead, I sat on the leather couch the previous owners had left behind and stared at nothing. My phone rang at midnight. Sophie's name glowed on the screen. I almost did not answer. I almost let it go to voicemail, let her fury bounce against silence until it burned out. But decades of conditioning made my thumb press the green button. "How could you do this to us?" Her voice was all rage, no greeting, no pause for breath. "You called the police on Ethan, your own son-in-law. Do you have any idea what you have done? Ethan is humiliated. His friends think you have lost your mind. I think you have lost your mind. What kind of father does this?" I sat motionless, listening to her anger echo through the quiet house. When she finally drew breath, she said, "We were going to tell you soon. I might be pregnant. And now you have proven you do not deserve to be a grandfather. You will never see these children The lie was so transparent it almost made me laugh. 6 months earlier, over dinner, we had discussed grandchildren. She had been clear. Not for years, Dad. Maybe never. Ethan is not ready, and I want to focus on my career. Back then, her words had relieved me. I thought she felt free to make her own choices. Now I heard them for what they were, ammunition saved for later use. Sophie, stop, I said quietly. Just stop. I know you are not pregnant, and I know what you are trying to do. It will not work anymore. What will not work? She snapped. Caring about my family? Trying to have a relationship with my own father? You did not want a relationship, I said. You wanted a vacation house. There was a pause, cold and calculated. When she spoke again, her tone had changed, all emotion drained out of it. Fine. You want to be alone? You want to lose your only daughter? You have got it. Do not call me. Do not text. We are done. Goodbye, Sophie. I ended the call before she could. The screen went dark. The ocean murmured beyond the terrace doors, calm and indifferent. Sleep would not come. I got up and stepped outside, standing at the railing, the night air biting against my skin. The moonlight scattered silver across the waves. I let the cold wind clear my head, while my mind began doing what it always did, calculating. 5 years in my Sacramento house, not one utility bill paid. Property taxes covered by me without hesitation because Ethan's startup needed capital. Repairs handled at my expense because they were busy. The new roof last year, the HVAC system the year before. Sophie's car payment that I had temporarily taken over 3 years ago. How much had I spent? 10,000? 20? More? And before that, the rent I paid for her apartment when she was finding herself after college. The trips to Europe she said she needed to experience life. The wedding that cost $45,000, half of it borrowed against my retirement fund. I thought I had been a good father, supportive, generous, selfless, the kind who never asked for anything in return, the kind who was taken advantage of. Dawn broke pink and gold over the ocean. I watched it rise, feeling something inside me shift. Not anger exactly, something colder, sharper. Focus. I made coffee in the unfamiliar kitchen, found my laptop, and sat at the dining table. I opened my financial software and started pulling records. 5 years of bank statements, credit card bills, property expenses, every transaction that involved Sophie or Ethan. The spreadsheet grew, column by column, dates, amounts, categories, notes. My coffee went cold beside me. I did not notice. The numbers told a story I'd refused to read for years. A story of careful manipulation disguised as love. By 8 in the morning, I had 5 years of data organized. By 9, I had the total. By 10, I was searching legal websites. Property Rights California. The language was dense but clear. They had no claim. None. Living in my house did not give them tenant rights. Not without rent, not without a lease, not without proof of contribution. Next search. Eviction process, California. Then, Family Law Attorney, Sacramento. The results loaded slowly. The first firm specialized in elder financial abuse. The term stung, but it was accurate. The second listing was a general practice firm. The third offered free consultations. My finger hovered over the first result. I clicked. 3 days later, I was sitting across from Ms. Warren, a property and estate attorney in her 50s, with gray streaks in her hair and a calm, deliberate way of speaking. Her office smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish. Her desk was perfectly ordered, the kind that tells you this person misses nothing. She greeted me with a firm handshake. Mr. Hale, I reviewed the documents you sent. Let us talk about your situation. I nodded. They have been living in my Sacramento house for 5 years. No lease, no rent, no bills paid. I have been covering everything. She tapped her pen against the folder. Then legally, they are guests, not tenants. Which means you have full rights to the property. You can serve a 30-day notice to vacate. If they do not leave, we file an unlawful detainer. The process is straightforward. What happens if they damage the property? Document everything, she said. Install cameras if possible. Keep every receipt. Some people become unpredictable when boundaries appear for the first time. I nodded. I also want to update my will. My estate currently leaves everything to my daughter. I think that needs to change. That is wise, she said. We can discuss trust structures once the eviction is underway. The paperwork took an hour. Her assistant printed the 30-day notice on firm letterhead. Official, cold, absolute. I signed it. Then she gave me a business card. If they threaten you or damage anything, call me immediately. And Richard, do not let them guilt you. You are not the villain here. That night, I drove back to Sacramento. My house, the one that had been mine for decades, looked smaller as I pulled into the driveway. The lights were on inside. The sound of the television carried through the front window. Sophie and Ethan were in the living room, takeout containers on the table, the television turned up too loud. They barely looked up when I entered. Sophie, Ethan, we need to talk. I set my briefcase on the side table. This living arrangement is no longer working. Ethan stretched, arms behind his head, not even muting the TV. Living arrangement? What are you talking about? We live here. This is our home. What? Because of the villa thing. You are still upset about that? Sophie crossed her arms. You are punishing us because Ethan wanted to surprise you. This is insane. You have lived here for 5 years without paying a cent of rent or utilities. I said calmly, that needs to change. That is what family does. Ethan said with a short laugh. You helped us out. Now suddenly you are keeping score. What is next? You want us to pay you back for birthday gifts? I looked at them carefully. Sophie's face was flushed with anger, but her eyes were calculating. Ethan's smirk was rehearsed. They had done this before, with landlords, with lenders, with friends. They knew how to play the scene. I opened my briefcase and removed the letter. The paper felt heavier than it should have, like it carried the weight of every year I had avoided this moment. This is a formal 30-day notice to vacate. You need to find another place to live by the date printed on this document. The room went still. Then Sophie's expression twisted. You are actually doing this. You are kicking your own daughter out? What kind of father are you? I placed the letter on the coffee table between us. The kind who has finally learned his limits. Ethan snatched the paper, scanned the first few lines, and threw it down. We will fight this. You cannot just throw us out. We have rights. The notice explains everything, I said, picking up my briefcase. I suggest you read it carefully. Sophie followed me down the hall, shouting after me. You are making the biggest mistake of your life. When you are old and alone, do not come crying to me. I closed the bedroom door quietly. Her voice continued, muffled but sharp. Threats mixed with pleading. The sound of something hitting the wall. Then silence. When I came out the next morning, the letter lay on the coffee table in pieces, torn neatly into strips. A sticky note sat on top in Sophie's handwriting. This is ridiculous, and you know it. I took a photo with my phone. Evidence. The first piece of evidence in what was about to become a long, bitter battle. The next morning, Sophie and Ethan were already gone when I came downstairs. Their breakfast dishes sat unwashed in the sink, their coffee mugs half full. I gathered the torn notice pieces into a manila envelope, labeled it with the date, and slid it into my desk drawer. Then I opened my laptop and ordered security cameras. 4 small wireless units with motion sensors and cloud backup. They would arrive the next afternoon. When the delivery truck came, I installed the cameras myself. 1 in the living room, 1 in the kitchen, 1 in the hallway, and another by the garage. I avoided bedrooms to respect privacy laws, but every shared space was now under watch. I tested the angles through my laptop. The footage was clear, time-stamped, and reliable. For the next few days, they acted as if nothing had happened. They came home late, left dirty dishes, watched television loudly until after midnight. Thursday night, they had friends over, laughing so hard the walls shook. I stayed in my room, documenting every disturbance. Ms. Warren had been specific. Observe, record, do not engage. The phone calls started about a week into the 30-day period. "Richard, I saw Sophie's post on Facebook," my cousin Martha said. "She says you are evicting her. She is pregnant. What is going on?" I took a breath. "Martha, there is more to the situation than what is online. I cannot discuss it right now, but I am handling it legally." 3 more calls followed that day. An uncle I had not spoken to in years, Sophie's godmother, even an old co-worker from my engineering firm. All of them had heard Sophie's version. I logged onto Facebook despite my better judgment. Her profile was public. Her posts were carefully worded, full of emotional manipulation. A photo of her sitting on the couch, hand on her stomach. The caption read, "When your father throws you out while you are carrying his grandchild." Comments poured in. Friends offering sympathy, relatives calling me heartless. Some even offered them money. Ms. Warren was calm when I called her. "Do not respond to any of it," she said. "Do not defend yourself. In court, we will use facts. Online, you will only feed the drama. They are trying to bait you." I followed her advice. I stayed silent. 2 weeks passed. One evening, I came home from a meeting and found the house unusually cold. The thermostat read 70, but icy air poured through the vents. I went to the basement. The heating unit's control panel hung open, wires pulled loose, not broken, disconnected deliberately. When I turned, Ethan was at the top of the stairs. "Hey, I think I might have bumped something down there," he said, pretending concern. "The heater's not working right. Want me to call someone to fix it?" "I will handle it," I replied. "Do not touch anything else." The technician arrived the next morning. "Looks like someone pulled these wires intentionally," he said. "Nothing's damaged, just disconnected." The repair cost $870. I paid, took the receipt, and that evening checked the security footage. There it was. Ethan entering the basement at 2:03 p.m. while I was out, opening the panel, pulling the wires, looking straight at the camera, smirking before walking away. He knew the cameras were there. It was not an accident. It was a message. I saved the footage, labeled it, and emailed it to Ms. Warren with the repair invoice attached. Her reply came an hour later. "Keep recording everything. Do not confront him. He is escalating. We are building a solid case." 21 days into the notice period, I received a text from Sophie. "Can we talk?" Just us. Coffee on J Street. I hesitated but agreed. Saturday morning, I arrived early. She walked in 10 minutes late. wearing a loose sweater, her hair pulled back. She sat down and slid a photo across the table, an ultrasound image. "Dad, I need to tell you something important." Her voice was soft, practiced, almost trembling. "I am pregnant. Just found out last week. And with all this stress, the eviction, I am terrified I will lose the baby." I picked up the photo. It was a standard ultrasound image, no date, no name. Could have been printed from the internet. "Which doctor did you see?" I asked. "When is your due date?" "It is early," she said, looking away. "I'm still figuring things out. The point is, you are putting your grandchild at risk with this vindictive behavior." I remembered her phone call from the villa weeks earlier, the same claim, the same emotional angle. "If you are genuinely pregnant," I said evenly, "then we will discuss how I can help. After you have moved out and we have established proper boundaries, the notice stands." Her tears dried instantly. Her expression changed, eyes narrowing. "You are really choosing pride over your own grandchild? Fine. When this baby grows up without a grandfather, remember that you did this." She stood up and walked out, leaving the ultrasound photo on the table. I turned it over. No identifying marks. Stock image. The days passed slowly. Day 27, 28, 29. They packed nothing. No boxes appeared. Their car stayed in the driveway. They were pretending none of this was real. Late that night, I overheard Ethan talking on the phone. "Nah, he is bluffing. My father-in-law always caves. He will not go through with court. We will ride it out." The next morning, Ms. Warren called. "Richard, if they are still in the house after the 30 days, we file immediately. Are you ready for that step?" "I am ready," I said. "Do it." I sat in the living room that evening while they watched television, pretending everything was normal. We were 3 people living in the same house, each waiting for a different outcome. I went to bed early, set my alarm for 6, lay in the dark listening to the house creak. Tomorrow was day 30. Day 31 arrived cold and bright. I woke early, dressed in a dark suit, and walked through the house one last time. Their belongings still filled every room. Clothes in closets, dishes in the sink, mail stacked on the counter. Their car sat in the driveway, like a statement of defiance. They had called my bluff, or thought they had. I picked up my briefcase and drove downtown. Ms. Warren met me in her office lobby, documents already in hand. They did not leave. "No." "Then we file today." I followed her to the conference room. The papers were ready. The unlawful detainer, the proof of notice, the photographic evidence. The filing fee was $450. I signed, wrote the check, and handed it over. "The court will schedule a hearing within 20 days, she said. "That is the law." As she gathered the forms, she looked up at me. "Are you sure you are ready for what comes next?" I nodded. "Yes, I have been ready for years." 2 hours later, the process server called. "Ms. Warren to confirm delivery." "Papers have been handed directly to Sophie Foster at the residence," he reported. "She accepted service but refused to sign acknowledgement." "That is fine," Ms. Warren said after hanging up. "Personal delivery counts. The clock starts now." For the first time in weeks, I drove back to the villa in Carmel. The ocean was calm that evening, waves soft and steady against the rocks. For 3 days I stayed there, trying to let the salt air quiet my thoughts. But silence could not erase what I knew was coming. When I returned to Sacramento, the mailbox was full. Among the envelopes was the notice from the court. Hearing scheduled, May 9th, 9 a.m., Department 14. The following day, Ms. Warren called. "We will prepare everything," she said. "Bring every receipt, every document, and all video clips." Over the next week, I gathered it all. The torn eviction notice, the video of Ethan damaging the heater, screenshots of Sophie's posts, and proof of ownership of the house. Everything went into a neat stack of manila folders, each labeled with dates. Sophie, meanwhile, continued her campaign online. She posted a photo of herself on the couch again, a blanket pulled over her legs, the caption reading, "Some people would rather destroy their family than show compassion." Comments multiplied. A few distant relatives chimed in, cousins, acquaintances, friends from college. Some expressed outrage, others, sympathy. One relative wrote, "There are two sides to every story." I did not reply. Ms. Warren reviewed the screenshots when we met for pre-trial preparation. "Your silence has been your strength," she said. "Let them build their narrative. Ours will be supported by facts." I nodded. That has been the hardest part. I know, but it is paying off. The morning of the hearing, I arrived early. The Sacramento County Courthouse was already busy. The hallway outside Department 14 lined with people waiting for family disputes, tenant cases, small claims. Fragments of personal wars being processed by the law. Ms. Warren joined me outside the courtroom, her case file under her arm. "Stay calm," she said quietly. "Answer the judge directly. No emotion. The evidence will do the work." Sophie and Ethan arrived 10 minutes before the hearing. She wore a conservative gray dress and minimal makeup, her hair neatly tied back, the image of the respectful daughter. Ethan wore a suit that did not fit properly, his face flushed, anger just below the surface. Their lawyer trailed behind them. A man named Russell Graves, whose website, I later learned, advertised payment plans for affordable family representation. When the clerk called our case, Hale versus Foster, unlawful detainer, we all rose. Judge Teresa Hartwell, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes behind narrow glasses, presided. She looked like someone who had seen every kind of family meltdown imaginable and grown immune to theatrics. Russell Graves stood first. "Your Honor, this is a family matter," he began. "My client believed she had her father's indefinite permission to remain in the family home. There was an implied agreement allowing her and her husband to live there." Ms. Warren rose smoothly, voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, there was no agreement, implied or otherwise. The defendants are adults who have lived rent-free for 5 years without contributing to property expenses. The plaintiff, Mr. Hale, provided proper 30-day notice to vacate. The law is clear." She handed the judge a neatly tabbed binder. "Inside are 5 years of property tax records, utility bills paid solely by Mr. Hale, and documentation showing zero contribution from the defendants. We have also included photos of the residents after the deadline passed, showing their belongings still occupying the space." Judge Hartwell flipped through the folder without comment. "Did the defendants pay any rent during this time?" Sophie spoke for the first time. "No, Your Honor, but he never asked for rent. He is my father. Families help each other." "Did you pay utilities or property taxes?" "No, but—" The judge cut her off. "This is not about family dynamics. This is about property rights." Graves tried to steer the discussion back. "Your Honor, my client is pregnant and—" "Do you have medical verification of that claim?" He hesitated. "Not at this time." "Then it is irrelevant." The judge turned another page in the folder. Ms. Warren called our witness, Stephanie Wells, the neighbor, a small woman in her 60s. She looked nervous but determined as she stepped forward. She described late-night arguments, loud parties, and the overgrown yard she had seen Sophie and Ethan neglect. Graves attempted to challenge her timeline, but Stephanie held firm. "They had friends over constantly," she said. "I never saw them do any yard work. Richard did it himself before he moved out." The judge nodded slowly. She glanced through the documents again, then looked up. "I see no evidence of tenancy, no lease, and no payments. The law is straightforward. The court fines for the plaintiff. The defendants will vacate the property within 15 days. If they fail to comply, the sheriff will enforce this order." Her gavel struck the desk once. Final. Sophie's face drained of color, then flushed red. Ethan leaned forward to whisper to their lawyer, but Russell Graves only shook his head. Whatever Sophie was demanding, he could not provide it. Outside the courtroom, she approached me quickly, eyes bright with fury. Ms. Warren stepped between us before she could get too close. "You actually did this," Sophie hissed. "You took me to court. You are not my father anymore. You are a stranger." I met her eyes. "I gave you every chance to handle this differently. You chose this path." Ethan pulled her away, muttering about appeals. Warren and I walked toward the parking lot. "Clean victory," she said. "They can file an appeal, but it will not hold. Still, expect pushback before the 15 days are up." I nodded. "I know. It will not surprise me." As we parted ways, she added softly, "You did the right thing, Richard. Boundaries do not make you cruel. They make you sane." I drove home in silence, past familiar streets that suddenly felt foreign. My phone started vibrating halfway down the highway. Sophie's name flashed on the screen. Once, twice, 3 times. I did not answer. By the time I reached Carmel, there were 7 missed calls and 2 voicemails. I did not listen to either. I poured myself coffee, stepped out to the terrace, and watched the sun sink into the horizon. The ocean did not care about human noise or family drama. Its rhythm never changed. 3 days later, Ms. Warren called. "They filed an appeal," she said, "but the court already rejected their motion for a stay. The 15-day countdown continues. Do not worry. This is almost over." "Almost," I repeated quietly. I hung up and stared out the window at the waves. For the first time, I let myself imagine what peace might feel like again. Real peace, not silence wrapped in anxiety. But peace was still a few weeks away. Because I knew Ethan, and I knew he was not finished yet. 8 days before the deadline, I drove back to Sacramento to check the house. From the street, everything looked the same. The same silver SUV parked in the driveway. The same curtains drawn tight across the living room windows. I unlocked the front door, phone camera recording, and stepped inside. The house smelled faintly of stale food and tension. Sophie and Ethan sat on the couch, the television playing softly. I noticed a few boxes stacked in the corner, but they were half empty, filled with crumpled newspapers and nothing else. They were props, not progress. I looked around carefully. "You have 8 days left," I said, keeping my voice level. "Have you found somewhere to live?" Ethan did not look up from the screen. "We are handling it," he said dismissively. "Why are you even here? Can't let us pack in peace?" Sophie stood up, folding her arms. "You are really going to let the sheriff drag us out? That's who you want to be? That's the story you want people to tell?" I did not respond. I simply walked through the rooms, documenting every space with my phone. Their clothes still filled the closets. Their dishes still filled the cabinets. The bathroom counters were cluttered with toiletries. There was no sign of moving, only defiance. 5 days later, I returned again. This time, Ethan was waiting for me. He followed me from room to room, his voice sharp, designed to provoke. "You proud of yourself?" he said. "Big man, using the courts against your own family. You think that makes you righteous? You think anyone is going to take your side when they find out what you've done?" I ignored him and kept filming, as Miss Warren had advised. He moved closer, invading my space, his breath hot with anger. "What are you doing, huh? Taking pictures? Playing detective? You think you're so smart. Go ahead, keep documenting." His tone dropped lower. "Come on, old man, take a swing. I know you want to. Show everyone who you really are." I stopped, met his eyes, and spoke quietly. "Step back, Ethan. I'm not doing this with you." His smirk widened. "That's right. Walk away. That's all you ever do. Walk away from your family." I walked toward the front door without answering, his taunts echoing behind me. When I reached my car, he followed, pounding his hand on the trunk as I reversed out of the driveway, shouting something I could not hear through the closed windows. Later that evening, I reviewed the security footage. He had performed it for the cameras, getting close, sneering, gesturing wildly, trying to bait me into reacting. I had not. That was the right choice. 3 days before the deadline, I received an email from Sophie. The subject line read, "Please read." I almost deleted it without opening. But curiosity won. The message was long, several paragraphs written in the tone of someone trying to sound heartfelt. She reminded me of childhood memories, learning to ride her bike, camping trips, bedtime stories after her mother died. "You always said you'd be there when I needed you," she wrote. "I need you now, Dad. Please don't do this." She described having nowhere to go, no money saved, claimed she had made mistakes because she was young and stupid, and promised to change. Her final paragraph read, "If you go through with this, I'll know you never really loved me." I read it twice, feeling that familiar pull in my chest, the instinct to protect, to fix, to rescue. She was still my daughter, and part of me still wanted to save her. But I remembered everything. The villa invasion, the 5 years of freeloading, the fake pregnancy, the heater sabotage, the courtroom lies. The pattern was undeniable. I replied simply, "You've had multiple chances to make different choices. The decision stands. I hope you find your way. But it will not be at my expense." I clicked send, closed the laptop, and felt something inside me harden into finality. The eviction deadline came on a Wednesday. I met Miss Warren at the house at 8 in the morning. The sheriff's deputies arrived an hour later. 2 men in uniform, calm and professional, clearly experienced at this kind of enforcement. Sophie opened the door wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, hair uncombed, face pale. "Please, we just need more time," she said. "We're trying. Please don't do this." One of the deputies shook his head gently. "Ma'am, you were given 15 days by court order. You need to leave now." Ethan appeared behind her, jaw tight, face red with anger. The deputies explained the process. They could take what fit in their vehicle today, and the rest would be moved to a storage facility for 18 days, after which it would be disposed of, if not claimed. Sophie started gathering things frantically, clothes, electronics, photo albums, while Ethan moved through the rooms with visible resentment, slamming drawers, muttering under his breath. For 2 hours, they went back and forth to their car, loading what they could. I stood near Ms. Warren's car, silent, watching but not helping. The deputies maintained order without emotion. When the last load was packed, Sophie paused before getting into the car. She turned to look at me, not crying, not pleading, just staring with cold hatred that burned through the distance between us. She did not say a word. Then she got into the car. Ethan started the engine, revved it hard, and they drove away. The deputies gave me a brief nod. "All clear, sir. They're gone." Ms. Warren asked if I wanted her to stay while I inspected the property. "Thank you," I said, "but I need to do this alone." She nodded, gave me a reassuring smile, and left. The house was silent. My house. I walked through the living room first. Deep scratches marred the hardwood floors, gouges punched into the drywall. Kitchen cabinet doors hung off their hinges. Broken plates filled the sink. It was deliberate destruction, petty and angry. My bedroom, at least, was untouched. But in the master bathroom, the mirror was cracked, and the towel rack had been ripped from the wall. I took photos of everything, every dent, every broken tile. In the garage, I found gaps where my tools had been. My grandfather's pocket watch was gone from my dresser, and so was the vintage camera my wife and I had bought on our 20th anniversary. Small thefts, but they hurt. I spent the rest of the day calling contractors, getting estimates for repairs, making lists. The total damage was roughly $3,000 or $4,000. Not enough to press charges, but enough to leave a scar. When I was done, I sat at the dining table and let the silence fill the space around me. The house felt hollow, but also lighter, as if something toxic had finally been drained from it. It was not peace yet, but it was the beginning of it. The following morning, I called Jennifer Hayes, a realtor I'd worked with before. She was efficient, professional, and knew the Sacramento market better than anyone I trusted. When she walked through the property 2 days later, clipboard in hand, she surveyed the damage quietly before speaking. "It is not as bad as it looks," she said. "Once the repairs are done, I can list it for about $685,000. The market is still strong. We will get offers fast." I nodded, relieved. She made notes as we moved from room to room. 2 weeks for repairs, then we stage it, she said briskly. "This will sell." I signed the paperwork without hesitation. As soon as she left, I began scheduling contractors, painters, flooring specialists, plumbers, all of them moving in and out of the house over the next few days. By the end of the week, the walls were patched, the cabinets replaced, and the broken mirror removed. The house no longer looked wounded. It looked neutral again, cleansed of their presence. That evening, I sat on the porch and watched the sun fade over the street where I had lived most of my adult life. For the first time in months, I felt my pulse slow, my shoulders drop. Exhaustion had been replaced by something quieter, resolve. A few days later, my cousin Martha called. Her voice carried the same tone of disbelief I had come to expect. "Richard, I heard Sophie and Ethan are living in a tiny apartment now. Ethan lost his job. Are you really just going to let them struggle like that?" I closed my eyes. "Martha, they are adults. They made their choices." She sighed. "That's your daughter? How can you be so cold?" "It is not cold," I said evenly. "It is necessary." She did not respond right away, then finally muttered, "I just hope you can live with yourself," before hanging up. The truth was, I could live with myself, better than I had in years. 2 weeks passed. The repairs finished ahead of schedule, and Jennifer returned with staging furniture and a photographer. The listing went live online that weekend. Within 3 days, there were 5 offers. While I waited, I spent my mornings at the Carmel Villa, walking along the beach, breathing air that did not carry the heaviness of resentment. I checked my phone less, answered calls selectively, and for the first time, stopped replaying old arguments in my head. Then the messages began again. The first was a text from Sophie. Dad, can we talk? I'm sorry about the house. Please answer. I stared at the words for several seconds, then deleted them. The next day came a voicemail, her voice shaking. I know I messed up. I want to fix things. Please call me back. I deleted that too. The third was an email, longer, polished, full of phrases about personal growth and reflection. It was well written, as if rehearsed. I read every line, recognized every manipulation pattern buried beneath the apology, and closed it without replying. The fourth attempt was in person. I was meeting a contractor at the house to finalize a repair invoice when I saw her standing on the porch. She looked thinner than I remembered, her eyes shadowed by exhaustion. Please, she said softly. Just 5 minutes. I need to talk. I stepped onto the porch, keeping my voice calm. Sophie, we have nothing to discuss right now. I just want to explain, she began, but I gently closed the door before she could finish. Through the frosted glass, I saw her silhouette linger, motionless. Then I heard her crying, soft and low. She stayed there for several minutes before finally walking away. That night, I blocked her number completely. Later that month, I met with Ms. Warren in her office to finalize the paperwork for the new trust. The conference room felt familiar now, a place of structure and control amid months of chaos. This structure will protect everything, she explained. Upon your death, 80% of your estate will go directly to the Veterans Foundation, and 20% will go to Sophie. No one can contest it. It is legally sealed. I looked over the documents carefully. The numbers were firm. $3.2 million to the foundation, $800,000 to Sophie. Enough for her to live comfortably if she learned how to be responsible, but not enough to waste. Ms. Warren's assistant notarized every page as I signed. When the last document was complete, Ms. Warren leaned back, folded her hands, and smiled slightly. You did well, Richard. You protected yourself and still left a door for compassion. That balance is rare. I nodded, feeling the first genuine lightness in months. Thank you, I said quietly, for everything. She stood, offered a handshake, and said, Go live your life now. You have earned your peace. Outside, the Sacramento sun was warm and golden. I paused on the sidewalk, inhaling deeply. For the first time in years, I felt entirely free. No weight on my shoulders, no financial strings attached to guilt or obligation. The next morning, I drove back to Carmel. The ocean air welcomed me home. The villa, perched above the cliffs, felt serene and unburdened. I spent the evening on the terrace with a glass of wine, watching the horizon dissolve into color. The noise of the past months was gone, replaced by the sound of waves and wind. By early June, life had regained rhythm. Mornings began with coffee and the newspaper, afternoons with quiet walks along the shore. The Sacramento house had multiple offers. Jennifer called to say 2 were above asking price. I told her to accept one of them. I did not care about a few thousand more or less. I just wanted the chapter closed. She laughed softly over the phone. You are a very decisive man, Mr. Hale. I wish all my clients were like you. I have had enough indecision to last a lifetime, I replied. It was late one afternoon when fate decided to test that resolve. I was at the Crossroads Carmel Shopping Center, walking through the aisles of a home goods store, looking at new glassware, when I froze. Just 20 feet away stood Sophie and Ethan. They were thinner, worn down, their clothes faded and their expressions brittle. Ethan's shoulders were tense, his jaw locked as he checked his phone. Sophie turned and saw me before I could slip away. Her face flickered between hope and fear. She took a step forward. "Dad," she said, voice trembling, "please wait. Just 5 minutes. That is all I ask." I should have walked away. Every instinct told me this could be another manipulation. But something in her voice stopped me. "5 minutes," I said. "There is a cafe down the street." Ethan nodded silently and stayed behind. We walked without speaking. When we sat, she folded her hands, looking down at her coffee. "I have been awful to you," she said. "I know that now. I took everything you gave and never gave anything back. I thought you owed it to me because you were my father. I was wrong." Her voice cracked slightly, but she did not cry. "Ethan cannot find work. I am working 2 jobs just to cover rent. I do not want money. I just want a chance to show you that I can change." I studied her face carefully, searching for the practiced signs of manipulation, the calculated pauses, the self-pity, the guilt traps. But what I saw instead was exhaustion. "What do you want from me, Sophie?" I asked. "Why come all the way here?" "I do not want money," she said quickly. "I know you will not give it. I just want my father back." "You have said you would change before," I reminded her quietly. "After every incident, there was an apology. Then the pattern started again." She nodded slowly. "I know, but this is different. Living without your help, it showed me what I lost." She hesitated, her voice softer now. "Please, do not shut me out forever." I leaned back, taking a breath. I saw not the woman she had become, but the girl she used to be, the one who clung to my hand at her mother's funeral, the one who cried when she scraped her knee, the one who used to fall asleep on my shoulder after long car rides. "Sophie," I said finally, "I hear you. Words are easy. Change is hard. I am not closing the door forever, but trust is earned over time. Show me through your actions, not your promises. In a year, if you have built something real on your own, we can talk." Tears welled in her eyes. "A year?" she whispered. "You are saying I might not see you for an entire year?" "That is what it takes to rebuild trust after it is broken," I said softly. "It is your responsibility now." I stood, preparing to leave. "I wish you well, Sophie. Truly." She stayed seated, silent, staring at her untouched coffee. When I reached the door, I looked back once. She had not moved. That night, back at the villa, I stood on the terrace again, watching the sun fade into the Pacific. My phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. "Thank you for listening. Sophie." I read it twice, then set the phone face down on the table. The ocean kept rolling on, endless and indifferent. Whatever happened next was hers to decide. The weeks that followed felt strangely calm, almost deceptively so. The villa was quiet, the ocean steady, and for the first time, my phone stayed silent for days at a time. In mid-July, Jennifer Hayes called with an update about the Sacramento house. "We have a strong offer," she said. $670,000. The buyers are pre-approved and want to close quickly." I stood at the terrace railing, watching sunlight shimmer on the water as she spoke. "That is 15,000 below asking," she added. "We could counter if you want." I shook my head, even though she could not see it. "No, accept it. I want it done." She paused, surprised. "You are sure? We could get more." "Jennifer," I said, "peace is worth more than $15,000. She laughed softly. "Fair enough. I will send the documents." After the call, I sat outside for a long time, listening to the sound of the surf hitting the rocks. The sale of that house felt symbolic, like closing the door on a life I had spent too long trying to fix for others. I spent the afternoon going through my accounts. Sophie's name was still listed as an emergency contact on one of my older bank profiles. I removed it. She had once been an authorized user on a credit card. I confirmed she had been removed months ago. The beneficiary on an old life insurance policy still listed her for the full amount. I changed that too. Everything was now routed through the trust, controlled, sealed, unreachable. By late July, Cousin Martha called again, her voice full of the latest family gossip. "Have you heard? Sophie and Ethan are separating. Their marriage is falling apart." I stayed silent as she continued, clearly expecting me to react. "He blames her for losing the house. She blames him for losing his job. They are both miserable. I hope you are satisfied." I let her words settle before replying calmly, "Martha, their marriage was built on taking. When there was nothing left to take, it collapsed. I am not responsible for that." She exhaled loudly, frustrated. "You have become so cold." "No," I said quietly. "I have just stopped burning myself to keep others warm." She hung up without another word. In early August, Ms. Warren called. Her tone was matter-of-fact but carried a hint of warning. "Richard, I received correspondence from a law office, Russell Graves again. Sophie wants to schedule a mediated discussion about what she calls a family settlement." I felt my jaw tighten. A settlement for what? "She did not specify," Ms. Warren said, "but I suspect she's hoping for money. Maybe she thinks you will want to end things quietly." I sighed. "Set it up. I want to make my position clear one final time." The meeting was scheduled for the last week of August. I drove back to Sacramento the evening before. The air was dry and heavy, the late summer sun turning the streets gold. I slept uneasily that night, not because I was uncertain, but because I knew it would be the final confrontation. The next morning, I met Ms. Warren at her office. "Be clear," she reminded me. "Be firm. Offer nothing. Closure, not negotiation." I nodded. "Understood." Sophie arrived 15 minutes late. She looked different, thinner still but dressed with care. Her lawyer, Graves, was the same man from court, carrying a cheap leather briefcase and an expression that mixed annoyance and fatigue. Mrs. Warren greeted them politely, then gestured for everyone to sit. Graves began first, his voice overly smooth. "Mr. Hale, Miss Foster wishes to find a common ground. She understands past mistakes, but feels there should be some form of financial resolution given the family connection." Miss Warren didn't let him finish. "Mr. Graves, let me be clear," she said evenly. "Mr. Hale has no legal obligation to provide financial assistance to an adult child. This meeting is a courtesy, not a negotiation." I looked directly at Sophie. "I am going to say this once, and I want there to be no misunderstanding. There will be no settlement, no loan, and no financial assistance of any kind. That part of our relationship is over permanently." Her eyes filled, not with tears at first, but with anger. "So that is it? You're just cutting me off forever?" "No," I said quietly. "I am cutting off the part of you that sees me as a resource instead of a person. If you ever want a real relationship again, it will have to be one built on respect, not money. I have already restructured my estate. Most of it goes to charity. You will receive a portion after my death, enough to live responsibly, not enough to waste. That decision is final." Graves cleared his throat, trying a new tactic. "Perhaps a short-term loan," he suggested, "something to help her get back on her feet." Ms. Warren gave a small, tight smile. "Mr. Graves, This conversation is over. Sophie stared at the table, her fingers twisting a napkin. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, small. I really have lost you, haven't I? Like actually lost you. I stood slowly. You lost the version of me that allowed himself to be used. Whether you ever find the man I am now, that is up to you. I walked toward the door without looking back. Ms. Warren followed, stopping beside me once we reached the hallway. You handled that perfectly, she said. It could not have been easy, but you did the right thing. It was not easy, I admitted, but it was necessary. As I left the building, sunlight washed across the street, blinding for a moment. I took a long breath, feeling the weight of finality settle. But not painfully this time. The drive back to Carmel was long and quiet. I kept the windows open, letting the wind rush through the car, the scent of eucalyptus and ocean salt growing stronger the closer I got to home. Highway 1 unfolded like a ribbon of calm against the restless sea. By the time I reached the villa, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky in streaks of orange and violet. I parked, stepped out, and listened to the waves. For the first time in months, I felt the tension leave my body completely. This might have been the last time I ever saw Sophie. But I also knew it was the first time I truly saw myself. The sun had dipped below the horizon by the time I pulled into the villa's driveway. The air carried that crisp, coastal chill that always seemed to sharpen the senses. Inside, the house felt still, almost sacred in its silence. I placed my briefcase on the counter, poured a glass of water, and stood in the middle of the living room, letting the quiet envelop me. I had said what needed to be said. There was no more pretending, no more half measures, no more guilt disguised as kindness. The chapter was closed. The next morning, I woke before dawn. The sky was pale gray, the ocean invisible but audible beyond the terrace. I made coffee, walked outside, and stood barefoot against the cool stone. The smell of salt and eucalyptus filled the air. The world looked new. That was the feeling I had been chasing for months. Not revenge, not victory, just stillness. By mid-morning, a FedEx truck pulled into the driveway. The driver handed me a thick envelope. The sender's label read, Warren and Associates, Attorneys at Law. Inside were the finalized copies of the trust paperwork, signed, notarized, and filed with the court. The legal seal shimmered faintly under the light. Everything was complete now. I sat at the dining table and read through each page slowly, carefully, making sure every clause, every line reflected my intention. The Veterans Foundation was listed as the primary beneficiary, 80% of my estate. Sophie was listed for the remaining 20%. The numbers were clear. $3.2 million to the foundation, $800,000 to her. It was exactly what I wanted. Compassion without indulgence, love without enabling. There were no loopholes, no potential challenges, no way to twist the future back into chaos. For the first time in my life, everything I had built was safe. From manipulation, from guilt, from emotional ransom. I placed the papers back into the envelope and set it aside. Outside, the sea had turned silver under the afternoon light. I brewed another cup of coffee and returned to the terrace, where the horizon stretched endlessly ahead. The phone on the table buzzed once, a text from Ms. Warren. Amanda did not show up for her follow-up meeting. That tells us everything. Congratulations, Richard. You've earned your peace. I smiled faintly. Thank you, I typed back. For everything. Her reply came seconds later. You did the hard work. I just gave it structure. Enjoy your life. You've earned it. I set the phone down and watched the light shift across the waves. For months, my life had revolved around confrontation, boundaries, and survival. Now, all that was left was quiet. Around 5 in the evening, the phone buzzed again, an unknown number this time. I hesitated, then opened the message. It was from Sophie. Maybe someday I will understand what I did wrong. Maybe someday I will become the person you needed me to be. But right now I can't. I'm sorry for everything. Goodbye, Dad. I read the message 3 times. There was no plea, no manipulation, no request for money or sympathy. Just resignation, defeat, maybe even truth. I placed the phone face down on the table. My finger hovered over the keyboard for a moment, wondering if I should reply. Something short, maybe comforting. But I stopped myself. Any response, no matter how gentle, would reopen a door that needed to stay closed until she learned to knock for the right reasons. Change had to come from her, not from my forgiveness. As the sun began to lower, I sat back and watched the light bend across the ocean. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to feel the weight of it all. The years of sacrifice, the guilt, the endless attempts to buy love, and the exhaustion of always being the one who gave while others took. The relief that came now was not joy. It was peace born from exhaustion, finally spent. Sometimes love meant saying no. Sometimes it meant stepping back so that those you loved could face the mirror without your shadow sheltering them. The house around me glowed with the soft gold of evening light. The Sacramento property was sold, the trust sealed, my finances clean. There were no loose ends left for anyone to pull. For decades, I had believed that protecting my family meant absorbing their chaos. Now I understood that real protection meant boundaries. That dignity, once surrendered, takes more courage to reclaim than any fight to defend it. I took my coffee and walked down to the terrace edge. Below, the Pacific stretched into endless distance, waves rolling toward the shore in a rhythm that had no beginning and no end. The horizon blazed orange and pink, like the world itself was finally exhaling. I stood there for a long time, letting the sound of the sea drown out the memories that no longer had power over me. The villa behind me stood silent, filled only with the faint hum of the wind through open windows. Every board, every wall, every piece of glass belonged entirely to me. It was not about possession. It was about peace earned honestly after a lifetime of noise. For years I had been a man defined by responsibility to others. Now I was defined by the quiet I had reclaimed for myself. The phone stayed on the table, face down, silent. Sophie's goodbye was the final word. I did not need to respond. The tide moved in and out, steady, impartial, eternal. I raised my cup in quiet acknowledgement, not a toast to victory, but to endurance, to surviving what love sometimes demands, to knowing when enough has been enough. The sun touched the horizon. The water caught fire in reflection. Tomorrow would come quietly, without weight. For the first time in decades, I would meet it as my own man, no longer a father burdened by guilt, but a man at peace with what he had done to reclaim his life. Justice had not come from vengeance or punishment. It had come from boundaries, from courage, and from silence that could no longer be manipulated. I turned toward the villa as the last of the daylight slipped away, the sound of waves soft and distant behind me. The house glowed in the dim light like something earned, not given. I stepped inside, set the empty mug on the counter, and turned off the lights one by one. The world outside darkened into calm. tomorrow would arrive unburdened. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next one, click on the box on the screen.